Lately, Springfield has been hit by a string of supernatural murders. All the victims share one thing in common. They were completely drained of blood, and their necks had 2 bite marks. At the crime scenes, the police only found a single Dracula-style cape. Based on Chief Wiggum's deduction, this is likely the work of a mummy. So to prevent more crime, he went ahead and trashed the Egyptian wing of the museum. After watching the news, Lisa feels the police are dead wrong. The evidence clearly points to vampires, but after hearing Lisa's explanation, Homer just laughs, like, come on, what year is it? Who still believes in vampires? But what happens next gives Homer a reality check. Recently, Mr. Burns bought Springfield's blood bank. After the deal, there was fresh blood dripping from his mouth, and it definitely wasn't his own. Not long after this, Burns invited the family to his country estate for a midnight dinner. Homer was actually pretty excited, but Lisa was worried. Sick, Marge tried to comfort her, saying there's nothing to fear since they followed Burns' request to wash their necks so they'd be fine. Homer even scrubbed his extra clean. When the family arrived at Burns' mansion, he greeted them and led them to the dining table. Once everyone was seated, the secretary, Smithers, poured everyone a glass of red liquid. Homer thought it was juice, but Lisa knew it was blood just by the smell. Even if Homer knew it was blood, he didn't care because you don't turn down free stuff. Lisa couldn't handle it, so she spilled the blood on her clothes on purpose and took Bart with her to go wash up. Bart still didn't believe Burns was a vampire. He figured even if he was, they'd never find his lair that easily. Right then, Bart hit a switch and opened a secret door. It was just a laundry room, making Lisa think Bart was right. But then they saw a sign on the wall that said Secret Vampire Room. And just as a side note, the animator hand drew an arrow pointing left. By the time they noticed, there was no budget left to fix it. When the two went inside, they found a room full of coffins. It wasn't much different from where Grandpa sleeps, but Lisa quickly spotted a book nearby. The cover read, Yes, I Am a Vampire, written by Montgomery Burns with a foreword by Steve Allen. There's a lot to say about Steve Allen, but we'll save that for later. While Lisa was looking at the book, the vampires hiding in the coffins all crawled out. Bart was so terrified that he was completely speechless. He tried to warn Lisa but couldn't get a word out until a vampire reached through the book, snapping Lisa back to reality. Lisa and Bart scrambled to escape. During the chase, they saw a super fun slide on the wall. Bart didn't even hesitate. He chose fun over survival and went for it. But then Bart was immediately snatched by a vampire. Then Burns flew over, ready to drain Bart's blood. Lisa managed to escape and ran to tell Homer and Marge that Burns is a vampire and Bart is dead. Before Homer and Marge could even process it, Burns walked in with a now vampire Bart. Seeing Bart still acting normal and saying hi, Homer told Lisa to stop being so dramatic. Since Lisa wanted to go home so badly, they headed back. But once home, Lisa was tossing and turning in bed. Suddenly, there was a noise at the window. She pulled the curtain and saw Bart. This gave Lisa a huge fright. Bart had already turned a bunch of people and was here to turn Lisa too. Bart broke through the window, grabbed Lisa, and went for her throat. Hearing the scream, Homer rushed in and stopped Bart just in time. Homer took a closer look and realized Bart had actually become a vampire. Right then, Grandpa showed up with a hammer and stake to kill Bart. Marge asked Grandpa how he knew Bart was a vampire. The moment he heard the word vampire, Grandpa got spooked and ran off. Then Bart turned into a bat and flew away. Marge couldn't believe it. Today, he's sucking blood. Tomorrow, he'll be smoking. Lisa had a plan, though. They had to kill the head vampire, Mr. Burns. Homer took the family back to Burns' country estate. On the way to his lair, the family found Burns' coffin. Lisa handed the tools to Homer and told him to drive the stake into Burns' heart. Homer bragged a bit, popped the coffin open, and hammered the stake in. He drove it right into Burns' heart. Burns woke up with a scream and turned to ash. Since Burns was dead, everything went back to normal. But then, the now vampire Grandpa flew over. Lisa wanted to know how Grandpa became a vampire, but he just brushed it off and said they were all vampires. Turns out the whole family, except Lisa, had turned into vampires. Homer even mentioned that Burns wasn't the head vampire at all. So who was the real head vampire? It was Marge all along. The end. This ending is a tribute to the 1965 animation, A Charlie Brown Christmas. The dog they added here corresponds to Snoopy. After watching so many new Treehouse of Horror episodes, looking back at the old ones, you'll likely notice some differences. One of the biggest is that the old characters had much richer details and movements, making them feel very charming. Like when Homer finds out Bart is a vampire and pinches Bart's nose. You can see how smooth and fluid that movement is. Or Homer's little reaction after seeing the slide. These small details don't change the plot, but they really level up the viewing experience. There are many reasons for this, but personally I think the shift in how animation is produced is a major factor. For example, early on they used cell animation. To put it simply, the artists would draw on a board, trace the outlines onto cells, paint the back of the cells, and finally combine them into a scene. This method is much more expensive and time-consuming than digital art. Around the year 2000, computer animation slowly replaced cell animation, and that classic texture from the old episodes disappeared. Since digital art isn't perfect, there's a subtle difference in the feel compared to cell work. Enough about that, let's talk about the tributes in this episode. The most obvious one is definitely the nod to Dracula. This character, created from a novel in 1897, has been adapted and remade countless times over the last century. The first remake was in 1922. Back then, to avoid copyright, they changed Dracula's name to Nosferatu, but he was still based on Dracula. Since then, there have been too many remakes to count. This episode riffs on the 1992 version of Dracula, known as Bram Stoker's Dracula. For instance, Burns' look is very similar to Dracula's look in that movie, and when Burns greets the family, his shadow is also similar to the one in the film. Surprisingly, that movie's director was Francis Ford Coppola, who directed The Godfather. That's a pretty big shift in style. As one of the top Hollywood directors of the 90s, he put together a seriously star-studded cast for this film. We've got Keanu Reeves from The Matrix, Monica Bellucci from Malna, and even Anthony Hopkins from The Silence of the Lambs in supporting roles. Based on ratings at home and abroad, the movie is a masterpiece, though maybe not God-tier. The obvious tributes are one thing, but a more subtle one comes from the 1987 film The Lost Boys. This matches the scene where Bart is flying outside. Besides that, the whole staking through the heart thing is also from that movie, though the hammering shot feels more like Bram Stoker's Dracula. This short story was written by Conan O'Brien. Yeah, the same guy who hosted The Tonight Show for years. He was actually invited to host The Tonight Show while he was still a writer for the series, so why mention him? Mostly to circle back to Steve Allen, who started The Tonight Show back in 1954 and served as its first host. This legend wrote thousands of songs and over 100 books. Even someone that successful once fell on hard times at 70 years old before building his way back to glory. Compiling all this info took quite a bit of work. If you enjoyed this, please long press the screen to recommend it. A free follow and like would really help out. Thanks everyone, see you next time.